All right. Hello, and welcome to the first live stream of The Pouch, the decaf latte of podcasts that tries to help the average Aussie try and make sense of their current political environment. I'm Gregg. Let's push this 4G situation to its limits, Savage.
And I'm Jake. This wasn't in my contract, Farr-Wharton. On this live show, we discuss education, paying our dues, and happiness during Corona.
Yeah, I think I'd like to chat about the happiness thing during Corona, Jake, because I'd like it if our listeners, if anyone is watching, you can comment and you can also have some reactions as well. Apparently, I can see them on my end if you do that. So this is all very new to me. It's all very new to Jake. So we're going to try and be as professional as we can, given that we haven't ever done anything like this before. It is showing me that we have precisely 0 people watching at the moment. So that's okay.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, actually, why don't we capitalize on that 0 people being there by me saying, hey, Greg, I forgot to press record. Seriously, though.
All right, well, let's go again. Let's do it again.
Recording now. Yeah, okay, let's do it again.
Okay. Hello, and we got one person. We have one person.
Oh, what a perfect timing.
Hello.
Just right in time for us to start.
Hello, and welcome to the first live stream of The Pouch, the decaf latte of podcasts that tries to help the average Aussie try and make sense of their current political environment. I'm Gregg. Let's push this 4G situation to the max, Savage.
And I'm Jake. This wasn't in my contract, Farr-Wharton. On this week's live show, we discuss education, paying our dues, and happiness during Corona.
Yeah, absolutely. And discussing that happiness during Corona is something I'd really like to do. So if you have a comment about your happiness during this coronavirus situation, please write a comment in the comments box, because apparently it does come up on the screen, and apparently I can even bring it up on the main screen itself. So we're using a program called Ecamm to do this, Ecamm Live, and I've
sponsors the show.
Yep. Big sponsor of the show, along with Woolworths and Coles and Yellow Cabs. And
Yellow Cabs gets you where you want to go.
Yellow Cabs gets you to Coles. And that viewer is gone.
For a basic box.
Now, so we want to talk about happiness today as well. We want to see if anyone out there has developed any new habits, if they've got any new habits that you've developed during coronavirus, and how you've kept yourself sane. So, Jake, how have you kept yourself sane during this coronavirus situation?
For me, it's all about exercise, and I'm sure that sounds like a terribly douchey thing to say, which it is. But the biggest thing for me is back when the world was normal, let's say, I'd get up every morning at 5 a.m., go for a run, and then I'd come back, get dressed, hop in the car, hop on public transport, and walk from the city, from Central Station into Fortitude Valley, which is a good sort of 2 kilometres. So I was getting a lot of exercise. Then I'd come home in the afternoon and do martial arts or a boxing class, which I'm sure is martial art. Oh, anyway, so it's about the exercise. I'm trying to keep up burning as many calories as I was when I was working in the office, and that seems to be keeping me relatively level-headed.
Well, that's really good news. I think like exercise for me too has been a huge part of it. And we've actually decked out our shed, which is where I am at the moment. We've decked out our shed to be a gym, to be like
Fantastic.
a Zoom meeting conference room. Our kids now do their taekwondo, their dance, all via Zoom. So we've got a message. I don't know how to bring it across. How do I bring it up? Oh, look. I can bring it up. Hi, guys. There we go. Hi. I presume everyone can see that. That's nice.
I can't.
Yeah. It says, hi, guys. Yeah. That's
hi.
Nice. See, and I bring it up on the screen. Okay. And there we go. And I can add a comment back. I can say, hi, Rachel. Now, yeah, so that's what we've been doing as well. We've been trying to stay on top of it. It's a really challenging thing to do. So, yeah, if you've got any comments around those of you who are watching live, how you've stayed sane during this coronavirus lockdown, bring it on. Make a comment and we can bring it up on the screen here.
Well, the other part of that, Greg, was you asked any new habits.
Yeah.
Any new habits have you formed? Have you formed any new habits while you've been on Corona quarantina?
I would say that the biggest one for me has probably been around work, and because because I think we're just going to admit that I'm a teacher in this episode. I don't know why not, and and so
And now on to education.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a teacher, so I think that one of the habits that I've made is the ability to work from home and the ability to have that routine as well. I know that I think it's just made us appreciate a bit more what's been happening, and like what have we own in the house, spending those times with the kids. I think that's been a really big part of it. What about you? I know you've got some kids as well.
Yeah, I have at least one, yeah, look, a fairly similar thing. Just trying to keep her active and engaged with school, and trying to keep her the heck away from the couch. She's got a Switch.
Yeah,
it doesn't make things easy, particularly with the caliber of engaging games, but that's you got to take a little bit, you got to give a little bit, and she's on holidays, so it's a little bit fair. But I suppose similar to you, that whole the habits, and we sort of discussed this on a recent episode of figuring out how to transition during the day. What time do I start? What time is my lunch? What time do I finish in the day? And then the transition from week to weekend. That I'm still struggling with that one.
Yeah.
But
you can lose track of time very easily, can't you?
It's very easy
in this situation. Now, look, you and I are pretty lucky in this regard, especially when it comes to Australia at the moment. We have, I think at last estimate, something like 1.4 million people are unemployed. We had 10%, projected to be unemployed. That's the government's projection. I think there was another projection which came out today from the IMF or something, and they put it at about 6.5%, 7%, so a little bit lower than the government's projections.
That's about what it is now.
Yeah, well,
that's about what it was before the coronavirus.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised about that, because I suppose the idea behind the JobKeeper payment is the clue is in the title, right? So so people would keep their jobs. So I suppose maybe if you're already a person who's lost your job now, that's probably it. Whereas if you're a person who's still on the payroll, it's possible that you're still just going to be able to stay on that payroll. I guess like I listened to a couple of interviews this morning with some pilots who have lost their jobs, and they're saying that basically they're going to be stacking shelves. They're going to be doing what they referred to as menial jobs, not my words. Into the future, into at least 2021. So
wow,
yeah, so pretty full on.
I mean, pilots aren't necessarily paid as well as one might think anyway.
Yeah.
From memory, their starting salary is around 40 or 50K.
Yeah.
So they've not got a massive pay packet, which is so mind blowing to me, considering the intricacy of their job. And the number of lives in their hands every single day. But that's just crazy to think of it's not an apprenticeship. Not that there's anything wrong with apprenticeships, I should clarify very quickly. No, but it is a degree, as well as thousands upon thousands of hours of flight time before you get to fly a commercial jet.
Yeah.
And to think that that's a tough transition. That is a really tough transition.
Yeah, and what I think they were saying too, that there's about a 6-month time in which they have to retrain the pilots up to get into the cockpits again. So even once all this is blown over, there's still a huge period of time that the pilots need to go through in order to get back into the planes and start flying them. So I think the government's done a pretty good job with its package. Obviously, Labor have been talking about the fact that they don't have some of their amendments put into it, and we've spoken about that before. I don't know if you can remember off the top of your head what some of those amendments were, Jake. What didn't they get in?
So the major ones were that Labor wanted as amendments into the JobKeeper package, the $130 billion stimulus, were the casual workers, essentially everyone up to 3 months to 12 months. So 12 months is the current cutoff provided by the government, and they're hoping that they were hoping rather. It's now passed, so it's now not included, but they were hoping hoping that everyone from 3 months onwards would be included in that for casuals, as well as people on temporary visa holders, so temporary workers, people on holiday visas. Or people on, I don't know that it's holiday visas. There's another type of visa where you can work.
Yeah.
Holiday work visa. It's something like that.
Catchy title. Something.
Yeah, a holiday work. I think it's just called the hostel bar worker. There's those people as well are unfortunately left out and stranded here. They don't have enough money to make it back.
No.
But they also don't have the ability to apply for money, which leaves them in a really weird, precarious position. You just hope that they have someone overseas who can send them some money.
Yeah, I think that's the case, right? And I know that here in Australia, some people have been speaking about, the government's been doing a great job of trying to make some tertiary courses a bit cheaper or even free, and encouraging people. The first story we've got to talk about is about retaining plan unveiled to aid jobless. So if you don't have a job, there's some respite here from the government in terms of tertiary education. I sort of went through the TAFE list, and some of it had to do with sort of basic sort of pharmaceutical skills, or some, they're very specific about I'm ready to buy a bunker. Yes, yeah. Let me see if I can't bring your comment up here. Yes. Suisi says I'm ready to buy a bunker. So yes, welcome, Yassir. I think a bunker is pretty good. What would your essential bunker
contain?
Yeah, what would yours be, Jake?
What would it be, or what would it contain?
What would it contain? Like, what would be your?
Okay.
If you could choose like one item to take with you into a bunker.
So I've got a slide aside. In the other week, Gregg, and maybe the listeners have cottoned on. I do a bit of DIY stuff around my house. And fairly recently, I went to Bunnings, and then I went to Mitre 10, just trying to find Besser blocks.
Yeah,
I needed some simple Besser blocks for the foundation of the thing. Anyway, could not find them anywhere, and I swear it coincided with the toilet paper shortage.
Yeah.
And my theory, which was echoed by the Bunnings staff that I was sharing it with, was that people were building bunkers specifically for their toilet paper. So what would I take into my bunker? Toilet paper.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What about a bucket?
Nah.
Or are you just using a corner?
I'm going to start eating it. Just eat it. Clean up my mess with the stuff. Yep, it'll be fine.
Fair
How
enough.
about you? What's going into your bunker?
Oh, man, just music. As long as I've got a decent pair of headphones, my AirPods, and I probably just have to take my iPhone, I guess. That's my only thing. That's all I'm taking with me. Can you sing a song while I have a drink of water, please?
Well, it's funny. Like, I kind of live in bunker territory, like I live above the ground, as do all my neighbours. But I'm fairly rural. We have large amounts of space in which to hide ourselves within. So I feel pretty all right.
Yeah, no, that's good. So we were talking about so we've got here that for the first time the government says it will provide 20,000 greatly reduced places in 6-month diploma or graduate certificates delivered remotely by universities or private institutions. The online courses starting in May will focus on what are deemed to be the areas of national priority, such as, Jake?
Nursing, teaching, counselling, IT and science.
Yeah. Yep. And we'll get to the whole teaching thing in a second. But I suppose it's interesting that those are the things that they've chosen, right? So nursing makes sense, teaching makes sense, counselling, I can see that being a big issue into the future, especially given that the mental health of people. So again, if you are watching live and you want to talk about that, you want to mention it in the comments, I can bring your comment up. If you want to mention how you're feeling, how you've been going with the whole lockdown situation, particularly if you're in Australia. How you went over the Easter break, if you want to comment on that.
And what would you bring into your bunker?
What would you bring into your bunker? Good question. Yep. Good question. I think I can bring that up as text. Ready? What
Fantastic.
would you bring into your bunker? I think if I
Great narration.
Oh, man,
Fantastic
this is great.
narration.
Well, I've got to narrate it, don't I? This is like rule number 1, is don't talk your listeners through the fact that you have no idea what you're doing. So there you go. What would you bring into your bunker? What would you bring into your bunker? So there you go. There's the question at the top of the page, right? Anyway. So yeah,
this is quite a good plan, I think. It is, of course, it is a bit interesting, of course, because a lot of the universities and tertiary educators are scaling back significantly because of the fact that there are vastly fewer students, both nationally and internationally. So it will just be interesting to determine how they're going to do it. But, like I did my bachelor almost entirely online. I did a postgrad degree entirely online. I did my master's degree almost entirely online. It's definitely doable. It's just whether the educational institutions have the capacity and like the online capability, like the Blackboard type of resources that will enable the level of interactivity that's required for a tertiary qualification.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's a huge one because, obviously that's where some of the money will be going. But I mean, people even in my situation who aren't even in, like, I wouldn't classify myself as being in rural or remote Australia, but those sorts of, you're hearing those stories about online delivery and how kids are faring, how parents are faring, with basically, very, very minuscule internet, people having to drive to different car parks and stuff like that, like McDonald's car parks and things to try and use their Wi-Fi. Just trying to get decent internet in some areas of Australia is a challenge. And I know that over time it's gotten better, but at the same time, it's like, it's like...
Well, we could have had a fibre to the premise national broadband network capable of 100 megabits per second at every single location. Unfortunately, we got a dog's breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a challenging one, that one, because when we hear from Liberal about it, they say we got it here quicker. We got the NBN here quicker, right?
But, well, they didn't. They got it speculatively.
Well, that's wrong.
Quicker. So they got it. The claim that they made, which was the claim that Malcolm Turnbull made all of those years ago, which was essentially we can do it cheaper and quicker.
Yeah.
But they did it neither cheaper nor quicker. But that's the nature of massive infrastructure projects, let alone massive IT infrastructure projects. You know, these things are difficult. When you're talking about IT infrastructure, you're talking about cables under the ground. You're talking about having to retract millions upon millions of existing copper cable in order to have the space to lay your fiber optic cable. And fiber optic is invariably thicker than copper. It's a massive project. So sure, they can claim that it might have been cheaper and be able to be delivered sooner, but we're now reeling from invariably the short-sightedness of a previous communications minister.
Yeah, and there was a lot of comments too about the fact that this was a bit of a conspiracy around pay television and all that sort of thing. I don't know, but anyway, Yassir has answered our question. If you are just tuning in, you're listening to a live version of the Pouch the podcast, and Jake's just changing his headphones. And we are a weekly podcast. You can check out our Facebook page. You can subscribe to us on Apple Music and on Spotify by searching for The Pouch. You can follow us on Twitter by searching for The Pouch the podcast. Yassir has commented with the question that I think is on your screen. It says, what would you bring into your bunker? This is what Yassir said. Yassir said, I would bring my cat, my generator, elk meat.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Potatoes. Why elk meat?
Why not elk meat?
Well, I don't know. Does he have a freezer? Anyway.
You're going to need it.
Yeah. Potatoes. Fair enough. Lots of potatoes. Water.
Lots of potatoes.
Radio. 2 guns. I'm guessing he's not Australian.
Well, the elk meat didn't give it away.
A shot. I can make this smaller and bring it over here. My cat generator. I can put it above your head. My cat generator, elk meat, potatoes, water, a radio, a shotgun, and a sniper. and some fuel. Yassi
Well,
has,
you need the fuel. Look, it all makes sense, but we did only ask for one thing.
well, yeah, but I mean, he's thought about this.
Yeah,
Yassi is, if you're going to get stuck in a bunker with someone, why not Yassi?
exactly. Exactly.
All right.
2 guns and a sniper. I mean, that's a lot of mouths to hear.
It is.
Yeah, it's a lot of mouths to hear.
It is. I wonder if it's just him in there. Anyway. All right. Anyway, if you are watching, I'm Gregg Savage. This is Jake Farr-Wharton. This is a live version of the Poucher podcast. You can like us on Facebook. We are, generally speaking, Australian current affairs or Australian politics. Today we're talking about a few of the initiatives that the government has brought in Australia around the coronavirus and how we're surviving through that. And if you've got any comments about how you've been surviving, what you've been doing, any of the habits that you've changed since being in lockdown, if you're coping mentally, if you've accessed any of the resources that the government has put out. I know I've got a telehealth meeting tomorrow, Jake. That's exciting.
How exciting.
Yeah.
How exciting. Yeah, I had one yesterday for a physio.
How'd it go?
It was very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I'm still in pain, but...
Jake, you're very small. Can you move your camera down? You're very
small?
You're very tiny. Your head's very tiny. Okay, that's better. Oh, that's better.
That?
Yeah.
There we go.
Even more if you want.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah, that's better. Now we have a similar head size.
Head size, okay. I'll have to get one of those, USB type HD cameras because I'm just using my laptop camera.
Yeah,
but,
I think I got the last one in the country.
Oh, nice. I have one in my little box of goodies in the studio here, but I'll have to dig it out. Yeah. So, do you want to move on to one of the other stories? Actually, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Greg,
yes,
was the Prime Minister was talking yesterday. He addressed teachers.
Yeah.
And he was essentially saying, you are essential workers because the last thing that we know that any teacher would want is for a student to miss out on a year of education. And I was just wondering whether I could get your reactions, your thoughts.
You can. So being a teacher, I've been a teacher for 10 years now. This is my thought about what's happening in Australia with this whole situation. I think that Scott Morrison has done a pretty good job of being consistent. I think he wants schools open, right? And I think the message from him has been clear from the start that he just wants schools to be open. That the evidence suggests, not that he wants it necessarily, but the evidence suggests that it's okay to have schools open. So if you can, why wouldn't you? Because like you said, they're going to be missing out on a year of education otherwise if you close them down now. So I think schools should have just followed that advice and kept schools open. States should have done that. However, I think the states have done their own thing, and Scott has been very supportive of that. So he has said his view, right? And he said that schools should be open. Then the states have said, okay, but we're going to individualize that a little bit. And he's been more than reasonable with that. And I think that his compromise with that has been to say that you just have to stay open for essential workers. Who is an essential worker? Anyone with a job, right? If you have a job, you can go to that job because you can get your kids to a school. So,
yeah,
I don't think he's been too wishy-washy with that. I think that if it was up to him, he would like all schools to be open. If Scott Morrison could have his way, all schools would be open. That's not the case because states have individualized it, which is more than fair enough, given that they start holidays at different times, given that they have individual circumstances. I think Canberra have like totally shut their schools, I think, for the whole of term 2. Victoria have said essential workers can bring their kids in for the whole of term 2. New South Wales are pretty much in the same boat. I think for the whole of term 2, it will be the case that that you are welcome to bring your kids in.
Yeah. Queensland is encouraging. Essentially, Queensland will do distance education for all but essential workers that need to drop their kids off.
Yeah.
Personally, I live in Queensland. I have a child in the Queensland education system. I think her school was quick to recognize that there were going to be a whole lot of nervous parents, nervous specifically about sending their kids to school where, their kids interacted, shared space and potentially, infected each other in order to bring those bugs home to pass it on to their parents or siblings. And I think that's sort of the thing that goes through parents' heads. Obviously, you're both a teacher and a parent, so it's an interesting dichotomy to hear that.
I crossed the bridge,
danced on the bridge even. But yeah, look, it is an interesting one. I don't know that I feel the same way that you do about the way that the Prime Minister and the people around him have been discussing schools in general. Yeah. I think at a high level they've done a reasonable job of saying, children aren't the mega spreaders that they are in other viruses such as influenza. That doesn't mean that they
30%,
won't get it.
Yeah, Brendan Murphy has said that 30% of Dr. Norman Swan has said 30% of cases come from kids. Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially it doesn't mean that they don't get it. It means that they are less symptomatic, i.e. less likely to and pass on the bug.
Yeah.
So that is encouraging, but in saying in my example, my wife is immune compromised. There is absolutely no way that my daughter could go to school and put her at risk.
No.
But there are plenty of situations where that is fine, appropriate. Teachers don't have lives anyway. They slave away both, during the day and during the evenings in order to prepare course material for their kids. They're unlikely to be socializing. I'm trying to make a dig at you, but you're not even smiling.
Sorry. I was concentrating on the comments for a second there. We got a like on Facebook. I'm all excited. Well, it comes through. I didn't realize it comes through. Anyway, sorry. What was it? Let's rewind.
I was saying that teachers don't have lives anyway, so it's unlikely that they will interact with people in their lives that will have coronavirus in order to bring it to school to pass it on to the kids.
Yes, absolutely. I think, I know that you're kind of having a dig, right? But I think it does lead on to the second part of this. So the first part for me is about how the government handles that situation, right? And the communication that comes out. The education minister today said that there's consistency among the message, and I think that there is 90% consistency across the message, right? Which is basically, if you have a job, go to that job. If you have to take your kids to school, take your kids to school. Now, I the other part of it is coping at home, right? And I'm going to use the Q&A session that was on ABC and everybody's favorite ex-teacher, Gabby Stroud. She said that the gist of what she said on Q&A was that parents are struggling and that what we need to do is concentrate on what matters. She said that what matters is that parents look after their kids, that they feel good, that they're happy at home, and that sort of thing. I don't think I agree with that 100%. I think that what matters is the curriculum. I think that what matters is teaching kids the curriculum, and that we need to figure out what that looks like at home for parents, right? And I totally agree that the foundation needs to be well-being, that the kids cannot learn. If they're freaked out by this whole situation, if they're freaked out by washing hands and not seeing grandma and not seeing friends and all that sort of stuff, you're not going to get anything done. Right? You're not going to get anything done with that kid. That's fair enough. Okay? But that's not the goal. The goal is not to have people feel good, right? The goal should be to access the curriculum, right? The goal should be, okay, now that if you've got that foundation, what does that look like at home for you? Because that's a real challenge. The real challenge is, how are you going to work from home? How are you going to supervise your children? How are you going to get them engaged in online learning? And she made a really good point. Gabby Stroud on Q&A on Monday night, she made another really good point, which was that she made two good points in a few months. All right, she said that parents have what did she say? She said that this is not homeschooling, right? That it's basically online learning. That teachers are still responsible for creating the content. That teachers are still responsible for putting up that information. And I think that needs to be reinforced as well. So that was another really good point. But yeah, the goal needs to be teaching the curriculum and what that looks like at home, and that's going to look different for different people. She also said she also said to contact your teachers if you have concerns about how to engage the student or how to access things, and I think that's a great idea as well. Contact the school, contact the teachers. They're still there. Like, we're still there. We're still active. We're still engaged. We'll
engage in preparation, right? Like the last week of school for last term, I walked. After a meeting, I walked into my daughter's room to see if she wanted a glass of water, and she was on a Zoom call. Dad, get out! I'm trying to have a maths class or something. I can't remember which, but anyway, look, they're just changing the location. I feel that they're just as I suppose it's incumbent on the parents to ensure that there is educational hygiene, so to speak, which refers to the distractions or the possibility of distractions. So as much as humanly possible, parents should probably be enforcing the removal of distractions like TVs, like I don't know, animals. I can't think of any others.
Get rid of your llamas.
Switch. Yeah. Exactly.
I think like the big thing, like, and I was speaking about it, the other day with a mate, and I said, well, what do you do in that situation? What do you do in the situation where you have got kids at home and you're struggling to teach them, in a home environment? And I would say that, from a teacher's perspective, one of the first things you got to do is find interest, right? But then it's also about time. It's also about the fact that you can't sit there for ages and ages and ages and get them and be if you, let me put it this way, if you try something and it's not working, then you're going to have to try something else. So you're going to need to have a break. So if you're trying to get them to do maths and they're refusing to do their maths, and you just keep asking and asking and asking and asking, and whatever you're doing isn't working, then you're going to have to try something else, right? You're going to have to try a reward situation or a consequence situation or whatever it is. I mean, and teachers aren't going to have a magic bullet for that, because we've got the same situations in the classroom. We still struggle with getting kids engaged. We still struggle with trying to find the work that's relevant to the kids, and you don't get 100% of kids getting across the mark. So we don't have magic bullets either.
No,
I think that
I don't know that teachers are encouraged to bring guns to school anyway.
magic guns. Look, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to teach kids. It's a challenge to teach your own kids. And it will always be a challenge to teach those kids. But that has to be a priority, right? If you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I'm not talking about just powering through while the kid feels miserable. They have to be, somewhat happy and calm and engaged. But you can't be. It's not all twirls and tiaras either. It's
overlapping circles.
It's overlapping concentric circles and spirals and things. Anyway, so that's my view. Not that I have a view.
Yeah. No, I think that's it's really important to try and ensure that the kids are engaged. But I don't know. I don't know. I suppose I'm lucky in that I have one daughter living at home who is in high school. I don't know how I would go with, say, 3, Greg.
Yeah,
that's a lot of people to constantly be tapping on the shoulder to go, how you going? How you going? How are you going? Also, I'm hopping on a Zoom call in 3 minutes. Yeah.
Well, look, I think if I'm totally honest about how we do it with 3 kids and being teachers and stuff, I'll have to say something I don't think is too controversial, but genetics plays a big part, right? And our kids happen to be quite decent kids, and they're quite well behaved, and we have to stay on top of them, but they're naturally pretty good kids. There's going to be some kids out there who aren't naturally inclined to sit down and do their work, or aren't naturally inclined to follow the instructions that they're given and all that sort of stuff. So that's going to be that's that's going to be a real challenge. So genetics plays a huge part in it, I think.
Yeah. I think that is controversial.
Is it? Well, no. I mean, like if you have a kid who's born with a particular disability or born with a particular predisposition to not doing what they're told, you can't help that. You can't change that. You can work with it.
Yeah, absolutely, and you engage them to the best of your ability, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right.
Or the best of their ability.
And what they're going to achieve during homeschooling is going to be different than someone who's naturally or academically gifted. I mean, it's the same as sport or running or swimming or whatever it is. Like I'm never going to be the best runner in the world. And part of that is genetics. Part of that is a huge lack of desire to go outside. But but some of that is genetics, right? I just won't have the genetics of Usain Bolt. I just won't have them. So I don't have that advantage already. But you could get me to go as fast as I could. You could get me to train, and you could get me to do certain things at certain times, and you could get me to run a certain way and all that sort of stuff. But I would need a desire to want to be that runner anyway. But yeah, it's a challenge. I think there's and the other thing is too that this is really, like I've said before, this coronavirus thing has really it's shed light on any weakness in any system. So if you have weak communication in your government, it's highlighted that. If you have a weak economy, it's highlighted that. If you have a leader who's predisposed to lying through their teeth when it comes to dealing with a situation, it's exposed that. If you've got a great healthcare system, it's enhanced that. I think the same thing with.
Well, it's made it more myopic. They're only dealing with essentially as few things as humanly possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. And it's the core of it. And everyone's looking to leaders, and everyone's looking to the other thing. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this either, but I think the teacher thing. I'm not going to say. What I will say is I think that there's some. I know that there's a lot of people getting praise at the moment, and I think that there's some areas in which, like people who are looking for a vaccine, I think that they deserve a lot of attention. The people who are looking for a vaccine, the people who are up every single day trying to figure out how to navigate an entire nation through this economic crisis, through this health crisis, the decisions that those people are making, I think that they need to get a lot more credit than what they're getting.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Because as much as teachers and stuff are working from home during the holidays, and I know that they are, we're still technically on holidays. The people who are looking for a vaccine, the people who are navigating through this, this economic crisis, this mental health crisis, this health crisis, the I don't know, the tourism crisis, all of those decisions, those people are not on holidays. Those people are not resting,
No, but they might take a holiday afterwards, and teachers will still be slugging along. So as much as I completely agree with what you're saying, I think it's also completely okay, if not rather important, to acknowledge the role of teachers in our lives. I have often said that they are the most underrated and underpaid, highly professional individuals that are responsible for, essentially acculturating the most, the next generation of people that, we are dependent upon for our future productivity.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, but I suppose I've never complained about the pay. I don't know. Oh gosh, we're going down a slippery slope here. But anyway, the last thing you want to do is
speaking
annoy
of hard
teachers.
transitions.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I'm allowed to say being a teacher, but I've never been unhappy with the pay. I think that we're paid pretty well, particularly in Australia. I mean, you go and look up at the pay. You go and look up at the pay scale in America. those guys have a reason to complain about what they're paid.
Yeah. Yeah, I was watching this. I don't know. Is it reality TV? I think it's reality TV. It's a show called Pawn Stars, PAWN Stars. It was a little bit heartbreaking towards the end of a story where somebody was selling this family heirloom, and they sold this family heirloom for thousands upon thousands of dollars. And when she was asked at the end of the discussion what she was going to spend the money on, she was buying stuff for her classroom.
Ah, that's nice. Yeah.
It is nice, but it's also heartbreaking that stuff isn't provided for her.
Look, again, I don't know, man. Like, I get stuff provided for me. Like, if I go out and buy something, I can get reimbursed for it. I don't.
Yeah.
My classroom burned down in the first year I was teaching, and I learned a very valuable lesson, which is don't buy anything for your classroom ever again. And I haven't. Like, I mean, I lie. I have. Like, you buy things for your classroom. You do, and there are some things you can't get back. But I mean, ultimately, I don't know. There's systems in place for me to get whiteboard markers and stuff. Maybe some teachers don't have that system in place. I don't know. But
it's an American show. It was an American situation.
Yeah, that is sad. I think if you literally run out of whiteboard markers and there's no system in place for you to buy a whiteboard marker. Actually, I lie. I've paid for my own photocopying before. At my old school, I ran out of photocopying. You had like a certain allocation per year. And it ran out. And then I had to give money to the school to pay for my own photocopying. That's not good. But I don't think that's right either. Anyway, oh God, here we go. Okay, let's move on.
Well, speaking of hard transitions, Greg,
yes. Speaking of videos that are going to get deleted.
It turns out, according to a Guardian Essential poll, that Australians are as happy today as before the coronavirus lockdown.
Yeah, okay.
Like that.
I'm sure some aren't. I think this is where averages come into it, yeah, because some are significantly. But I can see both sides. What does this article say? Jake, talk us through it.
Well, I'll give you some of the breakdowns. So, so 85%. So some of the detractions. So 85% of voters are concerned about the economy. 12% reported that they were struggling with self-isolation and feared for their mental health.
Yeah.
But the vast majority said that they are just as happy as they were. So it seems Australians are adjusting to the restrictions, with 57% of voters telling Essential, this is a Guardian Essential poll, that they spend more time connecting with people through text messages, phone calls, and online chats. And a further 21% are taking up online activities such as fitness classes and school subjects.
Yeah, I think that there's some advantages to this, right? I mean, I know I've spoken about it. We spoke about it with our family, right? We sat down and we said, what are some of the advantages to this situation? Because we can't go anywhere. We can't make a decision. You can't go on a holiday. We can't go in the car and go and visit cousins or nieces and nephews or anything like that. We've got to stay put. So I think that lack of decision making has been kind of good. Yep. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I absolutely love working from home. I'm really, really enjoying it. As I've said, a couple of times, I am still struggling with the week to weekend transition, but as this article suggested, I've been doing plenty of, I think I told you the other week, I normally do martial arts a couple of times a week or several times a week. And I've been doing it for years upon years. And I found a couple of apps, and they have, live boxing classes and kickboxing classes. And so I've just turned my shed into a gym.
Yeah.
And it works great, So personally, I think I'm getting along really well. But, that's me, the guy who's been doing social distancing well before it was required by law.
Yeah, there's a T-shirt in there somewhere, isn't there? I think, I know that we are kind of we're kind of happy doing our thing at the moment. You know, we're kind of happy waking up and not having to make those decisions about where to go or what to do. It's kind of nice. We bought them holiday packs. We bought the kids holiday packs, so they've got stuff to do, right? They're excuse me. Forgot I was on air then. And we Mum would be proud. You know, we don't have those decisions. I don't have to worry about taking the kids to Taekwondo. I don't have to worry about, you know, stopping to do something and taking them for a drive or something like that. I don't know. That's not like controversial, and I don't mind taking them to places. I just don't have to worry about that at the moment. So I don't know. I think the simplicity of it. I mean, we've certainly noticed in our neighborhood, a lot more people are exercising.
Yeah, wow.
Rachel and I wanted to get some T-shirts which said, you know, we were exercising before it was cool.
Before coronavirus.
Yeah. And whether or not these people were going to gyms, man, I don't know, because like there's just so many, like maybe it's just the only thing to do, so everyone's doing it all of a sudden. Like,
yeah, possibly. I certainly see a lot of people, and it is quite nice. At around this time each night, my wife, daughter, and I go for a walk around my block, and there are, as you say, plenty more people exercising than certainly I've ever seen before. And you know, we all wave and say good day. I suppose that is the saving grace for us, and maybe it's the same for you guys. But we are managing to maintain a certain level of community while maintaining our social distance. In that, you know, we are quite close with our, direct next door neighbours and directly adjacent across the road. And, you know, that means that we are able to sort of meet across the fence or meet across the road, 10, 12 metres apart. We have shared beers across the fence, again, 10, 12 metres apart, just to be very clear. Several times, and you know, people drive past drive through the road, and you know, there's us on one side of the road and our neighbours on the other side of the road, and they all say good day, and it is so long. Very long story short, sorry. We are still managing to maintain some level of community, whereas I'm not sure how easy that is for people living in a city who are so close to each other. Particularly in apartments. You know, you're not really forced to see anyone. It's a difficult one. But how are you sort of coping with that social isolation, I suppose?
Well, I'm not. I guess like from a social perspective, my work was pretty serious in terms of who I was socializing with, and we still had pretty regular meetings online. Like everything is basically online. The good thing, I speak to you weekly. This is the most social we've been because this is the first time we've actually looked at each other during the podcast.
I know.
So you know, this I'm even more social than. Yeah, look, and this is how I always dress. You just don't. You don't get to see it. You don't get to see it. The biggest challenge I've found is the mirroring of the camera. So when I go to fix my hair up, I just make it worse because it's mirrored. I have to close my eyes and do it instinctively because otherwise I mess it up. Anyway, so that's
a great hipster cut, actually.
Yeah, and look, I suppose with 3 kids, the family thing has been a challenge for us because we have so the kids have got so much family around here. You know, my wife's family is around here. We've got a grandma who lives up the road. We haven't been able to see her. The kids haven't been able to go and hug her or see the pets, or, you know, that's been a real challenge. But I suppose, well, actually, we use the exercise thing too. So, you know, we go exercising with mates, with a mate when we can. And we've encouraged the kids to do the same. So, Beckett has a couple of friends who live down the road. He gets one of them. They go for a bike ride. Our daughter has a mate. They go for a walk together around the block, and they can basically walk for as long as they want. So, you know, they can get a little bit out of their system. Yeah, that's sort of the stuff that that's how we've been coping. Are we happier? I think there'll be some lasting things. I think that there will be some appreciation for just staying put. Not having to design big holidays or not having to design big outings or anything like that. Just the idea of staying home, appreciating what we've got. I think that that's going to be a recurring theme for sure. I think that video calls are going to be a bit more accessible,
Prevalent?
I guess. Yeah, I suppose so. I
Yep.
guess it depends on what people on who keeps that themselves, like whether or not they broadcast taekwondo every week just because they can. Like, can they do both the live lesson and the webcam lesson, same as dance and all that sort of stuff? So therefore, we're not driving everywhere. I mean, look, you
I
can't.
love that idea.
You can't top this for having a massive reduction on CO2 either. Like, I mean, if climate change is your thing, and it should be, right? You can't top this.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
it's had
you couldn't have
had
hoped for anything
remarkable
better.
impacts. No, exactly. It has had remarkable impacts on the heaviest polluting nations, particularly in China. There were massive reductions in greenhouse emissions over a certain period. I think they're roughly ramping back up to normal now, but the little bit of respite goes a long way.
Well, I think that'll be something that will stick around. Yeah, I think that people will say, "Well, hang on, you managed to do this without everyone driving around and flying around.
Yep.
Let's stick with these video conferences. Let's stick with when you can. Like obviously we all have to do it at the moment. We're forced to do it, but when you can, why not do it via Zoom? Why not do it via well, maybe not Zoom. I don't know. Everyone hates Zoom. I forgot.
Yeah, that's quite interesting actually, because a bit of a statistic from.
Give me some statistics, Jake.
I don't have a statistic. I'm sorry, but a factoid from my industry. The RCGPA, Royal College of General Practitioners of Australia, RCGPA. Anyway,
Classic.
they are saying that the prevalence and access to telehealth that has occurred over the last few months, over the last few weeks, and will certainly ramp up as Australia is more heavily impacted by coronavirus. They are unlikely to, essentially those peaks that we establish in telehealth, they're unlikely to ever go away. So things that people might have travelled, hundreds or thousands or even just 10 kilometres or less to, visit their, orthopaedic surgeon for a consult after a broken arm, or for a endocrinology consult, just checking on how your thyroid is going, etc. Those are much more likely to be occurring via telehealth in the future than they ever were prior to coronavirus. And I think that's really good, because it is such an imposition for patients to, particularly elderly patients, particularly rural and remote patients, to get in a car and travel to their doctors just for, what could easily be a 10 to 15 minute appointment just to fly all the way back. It's a massive thing.
Yeah.
So I think these are great things that perhaps we are picking up out of the coronavirus.
It's that rural and remote thing, right? I mean, we've got a few people watching at the moment, and just as a reminder, you're listening to a live stream of the Pouch the Podcast. You can check out our Facebook page. You can subscribe via Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe via Spotify. You can search for the Pouch the Podcast and check us out there. We're a little more structured usually, but this has been good as a bit of a live stream. Now, talking about rural and remote, if there's anyone watching who's from America, because we managed to snag a few American viewers along the way in our podcast, we have, when we talk about rural and remote here in Australia, it is very rural and very remote. Days of driving to get from one side of just a state to the other state, in which and sometimes just hours and hours and hours of driving to get from one town to the other town. It's not, this is not some frivolous thing. And I think that if they can have the infrastructure, if they can have the internet infrastructure and the and the ways and means to communicate with their doctors via telehealth, man, that is just such an awesome thing. And I've got it here. Like I in the Blue Mountains, I rung up. I wanted to get a script filled, and I was like, "Oh, I'll make an appointment." And they rang me up and said, "Oh, do you just want the script filled?" I said, "Yeah, just the script." They said, "Okay, well, let's do that via telehealth." And I was like, "Oh, I thought it must have just been like for Honestly, I thought it was just for like coronavirus patients. I thought it was for like.
Well, it actually was up until really 4 or 5 weeks ago. The federal health minister, Gregg Hunt, announced really only a month ago that there were a range of new Medicare benefit schedule item numbers that would encompass general consults to GPs and a range of other specialties could essentially now access telehealth as a way to conduct a consultation. Before that, they had no ability to recoup money other than to bill you directly. So your GP essentially had a very minute access to billable item numbers for telehealth services.
Yeah, and it's so good. Like I said, if you can't. If I don't have to get in the car and drive, that's great. That's great for the environment. It's great for me. If I can just sort of chill out in my garage here and do it that way. I think you might be a bit surprised when I log in via webcam and have a microphone and stuff. I think it tends to throw people off. But I think why not? Like it's just if you can do it this way, why not? Like it's just so. Even for me, it was convenient. Let alone if it was generally an inconvenience for me to go to the hospital. It's to go to the doctors. I think it's just such a great thing. And hopefully one of the things that do last.
Yeah. Just picturing the look on your doctor's face when you come up for the video consult, and he or she says, "Am I interviewing you or are you interviewing me?"
I'll be like, "Yeah, you're live on the air. We're live on Facebook."
And now it's time to go to some callers.
Doctor, let's go through Gregg's problems. Hey, I'll be able to tell him though that I managed to find a light which hid the seborrheic dermatitis, which was nice. That took a while.
Yeah, I still think you got to figure out a way to say that in a sexy way.
That's why I've got you, Jake. I don't do.
Seborrheic
I can't.
dermatitis.
Yeah, see, that's good. That's nice.
Wow.
That makes me feel good. That makes me feel good. Yeah. You want to chat about one more thing, and then we'll call.
Look, the final story that I had was it's tangentially political in that it's been raised by a well-known economist, Professor Robert Brunig, that Australia's way potentially forward after the coronavirus to pay down the coronavirus debt is going to be to raise the goods and services tax that was enacted by our friend John Howard. 20 years ago? So it's really quite interesting. But we're totaling over $214 billion in COVID-19 economic responses.
Yeah, right.
And essentially the way that they think of these things is, I mean, this is a generational thing because this is, I think at 60, that first package that came out, which was around 60 billion, that was 0.1% of Australia's GDP.
Yeah.
Now, or gross domestic product. Now that our GDP, Australia's GDP has shrunk by around 30% over the last several weeks.
Okay.
So our ability to pay back on that debt is diminishing significantly. So I suppose this is where we get some interesting and hard-hitting economics people coming out saying, that there are a few interesting ways to do this, and you could do it by just raising the GST, goods and services tax, by 2 or 3% for a predetermined amount of time. And what that means is that the people who have been given stimulus money in order to get them through this tough time are effectively then the ones paying down that debt. So it is an interesting way to do it. Essentially everyone pays a GST. People who buy more stuff, who receive more services are more likely to pay a greater share, obviously.
Yeah.
It does, of course, affect those on lower incomes significantly more because, essentially I've got less, or I have a smaller amount of money in order to do the various things that I need to do as an individual. And you're asking me to pay more for that thing that I used to pay only $1 for?
Yeah.
Why? So, it does disproportionately affect low income people, but invariably this may be a way forward. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, the disadvantage of people, again, like I said before, the coronavirus has a pretty nifty habit of highlighting any sort of disparity or any sort of weakness in the system. And in our case in Australia, it's certainly highlighted, that there is there's a huge gap between those who are very well off and those who aren't very well off. And if you're not well off and then you have to start paying for more, for things that are already essential just to pay this back. I don't know. I think there's been a few ideas floated around, one of which in the short term, I guess being a younger person who maybe is a bit naive when it comes to money. I like the idea of the superannuation not being paid for a little while, but obviously that's going to have tremendous effects when we're older and all that sort of stuff. But at least it's sort of, at least that impacts me. Like, it doesn't impact it. Everyone still has the same amount of money, or that everyone has a little bit more money, but they're not losing out on anything, and it doesn't cost the government anything. So there wasn't. I mean, it's sort of, I've always liked that idea for that reason. The idea that it didn't cost anyone anything, and that it was just sort of a bit of free money in the short term. I'm not that naive that I don't understand that it will have repercussions down the track. But anything we do is going to have repercussions down the track.
Yeah, of course. And invariably, we are one of the first generations that experienced superannuation effectively from the time that we were born. Not that we were working when we were born, but we would have experienced superannuation or paying into superannuation from the time that we commenced employment.
Yeah.
However many years ago that was.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was a huge change to our system. It's a huge advantage that we have as a nation. Again, it's the coronavirus has highlighted that. The coronavirus has highlighted any nations that didn't have compulsory superannuation, which is, I'm guessing, like most.
Most, yeah.
I don't even think they have it in New Zealand, or if they do have it in New Zealand, I think it's pretty.
They do. They have a pension, but it's essentially. I really need to learn to stop saying the word essentially.
Yeah, you do. That's basically my editing on a Sunday is getting rid of.
Yeah, wow. I still heard 30, good 30 as I was jogging along the other day. I had to listen back to, oh my God, I really need to get a new word into my lexicon. It's such an important thing. But, in saying that, what's 2 years of paying 9% of your income into, or 7% of your income into the government coffers instead of into superannuation? Are we going to miss that money? Probably.
Yeah.
Who knows? It's the sort of thing that you regret when you're 55 or 60, approaching requirement, maybe approaching retirement, not requirement, but approaching retirement and trying to figure out where the hell did you put all of those superannuation accounts? Did I merge that one into that one? Have I got? Oh my gosh. As you're trying to figure out how you can live in luxury on $10,000 a year.
Well. Again, we've figured that out during coronavirus, haven't we?
No, exactly.
All right. Well, Jake, I think that's about the show for today. I was wondering if, just before you go, I've got some best friend questions here. Do you want to answer some best friend questions, Jake, so the listeners can get to know you a bit better? So this is the Poucher Podcast.
Sounds great.
You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and I'm Gregg Savage. That is Jake Farr-Wharton, who's mysteriously disappeared into his. Oh no, there he's back.
Sorry, I needed a drink.
And we're gonna get to know you a little bit, Jake. Are you ready? And if you are happy during lockdown, or if you've got some views on that, please comment. I can bring up your comments on the screen there. And a mosquito is biting my head as we speak, but I'm being very professional about it. I'm going to just I'm not going to whack myself in the head.
Reach up.
All right, now we're going to play Getting to Know You, Jake. Jake, what's your favorite TV show?
What am I enjoying at the moment? Okay, there's a show that I'm binging at the moment called.
Don't say Tiger King. Please don't say Tiger King.
No. It's the Picard. I couldn't remember the name of it. It's Star Trek.
Yeah.
But it's focusing on Jean-Luc Picard.
Ah.
It's super awesome. I'm really enjoying it on Amazon.
You don't know the name of it though?
I think it's just called Picard.
Picard, right?
Star Trek Picard.
I've scrolled down because the rest of them are just like, what's your favorite food and stuff, right? But these are the more challenging questions, apparently. So what are 3 items that you always carry?
Phone, wallet, and watch.
Do you carry a watch? We wear a watch.
Well, I wear it, yeah.
What time do you get up in the morning?
I'm a 5 a.m.er.
5 a.m. Yeah.
Yep.
What are three strengths of yours?
Well, my greatest strength is I'd say my strength, and it's also my greatest weakness as well.
Oh, okay.
My strength, yeah, because too strong.
Is what?
Yeah, I'm too strong.
You're just too strong.
Weakness, general weakness.
Yeah.
Too strong.
Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Like strong emotionally or physically?
Oh, just all of them.
Yeah.
Think of a concept.
Mentally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially.
What's the longest you've ever had to wait for something? Like mentally strong?
Well, I've been waiting for this podcast to end for about an hour.
Hour and 5 minutes and 32 seconds to be precise, according to the timer. We got 7 likes. If you are watching and you feel like giving us a like, if you want to bump us up to 10 before we go, that'd be good.
What's your favorite TV show?
I don't know. I knew you'd ask this. I sort of have a default one that I just answer, but I don't know if it's actually my favorite or not. I'd probably need. I know it sounds ludicrous, but I'd probably need Rachel to answer this for me because I don't know. But there was a show called Cowboy Bebop. It's like an animated one.
I didn't know you were an anime guy.
Well, I don't know if I am or not. I just know that I really liked Cowboy Bebop. Yeah. I really liked Cowboy Bebop. That was one of my favorite shows.
There are 17 suggestions coming your way straight after this podcast.
And that would be. I think that is my favorite show. Okay, so what are you afraid of? There you go. That's a good one.
Fear itself?
No, you've got to give me a better answer than that. That's a terrible answer.
I'm feeling like this is a job interview. What am I afraid of?
You're not the only one I'm live podcasting with today, Jake.
So I'll give you a real answer, which is just any my daughter feeling any pain or sadness or sickness.
Well, that's reasonable, I suppose.
Yeah.
So not like flying. Not like flying.
Not afraid of flying. Yeah. Refer back to the strength question.
I'm afraid of flying. I hate.
Are you?
I hate it.
Really?
Yeah. Rachel's commented. God. Someone called Rachel has commented. She may or may not know me. She said The Late Show. Yeah, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, I would say. But it was the Colbert Report more so than The Late Show. If I had to choose between like The Late Show or the Colbert Report or Cowboy Bebop, I'd probably choose the Colbert Report.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a solid choice.
It was just life-changing. Like it was such a joy to come home every day and watch the Colbert Report. Yep. Like even as an Australian.
Yeah. Satire of a right-wing political commentator. It was fantastic.
Yeah. And it was only 4 days a week, and I hated Monday afternoons. Monday afternoons it wasn't on because of the whole time delay thing. Anyway. But yeah, I'm afraid of flying. I hate flying.
I had no idea. Crystal, my partner, is epically afraid of flying. So much so that I don't sit near her anymore. Fly. So I love flying. That feeling of of
responsibility for the person beside you.
Your seat.
Mm.
It's the best.
Yeah, I think
best.
I've promised myself I'll never let it stop me from traveling anywhere, and I haven't let it stop me from traveling anywhere. I just poop in my pants the whole time.
Well, the reason, and please stop me if I start triggering you, but the reason that it happened was we were flying into America.
See, this is what people do. This is what happens every single time you tell someone that you're afraid of flying. They decide, I'm going to launch into my terrible flying story. This is the worst story.
The worst story. Well, if it's going to trigger you,
no, it doesn't trigger me. So, I just find it amusing.
It's I have no doubt. It's the same as any time I tell someone that I got celiac disease or that I need gluten-free
Yeah,
food.
exactly.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a bit sensitive with gluten. Yeah, you get a bit bloated. I get a bit cancery. Anyway, so
I think I did that when you
were
told me,
flying-
actually. I told you about my milk problem.
No,
Anyway,
nothing wrong with
all
that.
right, let's go. Let's wrap it up. Come on, let's go.
I was flying into Portland with my wife and daughter, and got some quite bad turbulence, and it was getting progressively worse and worse, and to the point where the flight attendants were strapping themselves in because they were.
Yeah, I've had that. That's fun.
It was just absolutely massive.
Yeah.
And about 30 or 40 minutes into this, just rocketing up and down, we dropped out of the sky. So we I don't know how far we dropped, but it was quite significant. And it was so jarring that somebody went into cardiac arrest, and there was a call for is there somebody on this flight that's a doctor? Anyway, they died.
Jake, that's a terrible story.
Well, you asked me to tell it. I distinctly recall.
That's terrible. What a terrible way to end the podcast. Our live stream. Anyway, that's very sad for that person.
Yeah, I should be more tactful about the stories that I tell.
All right, no, it's a good story. I think overall, it's a good story. I think
that would be.
It was quite a sudden ending. I think you need to start with the fact that. I think you could start with the fact that someone died. Like I think you could say, I have a story about when someone died on a plane, because then I know where the story's going. Anyway, I think that about wraps up today's podcast, Jake. I want to thank you for doing a live stream with me. Thank you so much for just taking the time out to chat with us today. And I don't know how the internet handled it. I don't know how my 4G here in the Blue Mountains handled it. I know that I spent a lot of my day making sure that this live stream worked. So if you enjoyed today, make sure you check out thepouchthepodcast.com. You can also just subscribe to us straight away on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify by searching for The Pouch. I was going to say El Poucho, but A, probably
that would be
racist, and B, I don't want anyone searching up El Poucho. I would rather you just go straight for The Pouch.
Lest El Poucho, the podcasto, move up in the Google ratings.
But yeah, I'm happy to do this again. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. Particularly if, I haven't been able to at all see, but if people were interacting and they found it interesting, then...
We got 8 likes.
then 100%.
Oh, we did. We had a couple of comments coming through, which was really, really lovely, and it was great fun for me being able to bring those up on the screen there. So yeah, thank you to those who did comment, and thank you to those who were taking part. I can bring up a comment. Look, I can do this. I can bring it up here. Look. So Yasir said, "Oh, I've covered your face, Jake. Oh my goodness me, it's an enormous comment. I can't. I can move this over there, and I can move this down here." Yasir said, "I think Australia is doing all right. It is a little bit late, but it is okay. The number of cases is stable, and 63 deaths is not that bad." You can't see. No one can see my face. There we go. Okay, I've got it now. I just wish more reinforcements and restrictions. So yes, he is saying that he wishes that there was more reinforcements and restrictions for the future. We must invest more in virology labs around the world. Look, it's hard, isn't it? Because you watch these news articles, and let me backtrack. Let me pretend like this isn't a live stream. You watch these news episodes at night, and you these news stories, and you hear about these tremendous deaths around the world, and then it comes to Australia, and it's like 63, and each one of those deaths is tragic, but it is nowhere near as bad as what it could be.
Oh yeah, the US is into tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands now of deaths,
and
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's right. And even when you take out the idea that it, of per capita, Australia is still doing really well.
Remarkably well.
Yeah. So that's good.
Pouch the podcast. Rate and subscribe. It really helps for people to find us, and we will catch you later this week for our regular podcast,
which we may just broadcast live because we can.
Yeah, because we can.
But we'll schedule it and we'll keep you updated. So like our page, check us out, pouchpodcast.com. Thank you so much for chatting to me today or tonight. It's gone dark. It's now
All of
officially
those.
dark. And I've
Thanks,
got muzzies
Yasia.
biting my neck.
Thanks, other people. Sorry about the mosquitoes.
Your fault. All right. Peace out, everyone. See ya. Move that back in the middle. Move that thing back in the middle. There we go. Okay. Everything's back the way it should be. Good night, Jake.
Good night, Greg. That was great.
All done.
Yeah, that was great.